Hello, everybody. It looks like everything is ready to start. So here we go. Hello and welcome to the Laval Virtual Day dedicated to data. I'm Harriet. Do you hear me, by the way? Perfect. Great. Super. Thank you. So I'm Harriet. I'm head of community relations and in charge of the conferences here at Laval Virtual. And I'm just going to start with a few ground rules to know before we start. So please cut your microphone and stay off the stage, or I will, without someone kick you out of this world. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat box. Adele, who is around the room, will be picking them up and we will answer them at the end with the panel and the Q&A time. If you have any technical issues, please click on the Go to Campus, then Reception, and there's technical help there for you. So if you have any issues, please go ahead and chat with the people at the entrance. Now, your avatar can do plenty of things, as you may know and tested already, and I'm going to teach you how to clap. So here we go. If you want to clap, just press F4. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Well done. So every time we're done and ready to clap the speaker, go ahead and do F4 for the round of applause. Perfect. And without waiting any second, I would like to introduce you Solène Girardin, data protection lawyer at Bold, who will introduce this event and what is happening basically in the world of data right now. Solène, please come here. A round of applause for Solène.
Hi everyone, many thanks Harriet for the introduction. So as Harriet told you, I'm a data protection lawyer, and today for this introduction, I will tell you more about privacy issues regarding AR and VR and what we can do and cannot do with personal data. So AR and VR devices raise new privacy issues due to three main reasons. The first reason is the variety of technologies involved. We have a lot of new technologies involved with AR and VR devices. The second reason is the sensitivity of the information they collect. Because of AR and VR, we will collect a lot of sensitive information like location data, biometric data. And the third reason is because the data is what makes the devices function. So we will automatically collect many personal data because it is inherent to AR and VR in order to make the device functions. So what kind of data are concerned? In order for VR to function, it requires a lot of personal data like eye gaze, gestures, facial expression. All of that, it is personal data. So what is personal data? Within the meaning of GDPR, we will see later explicitly what is GDPR. GDPR defines personal data as any information relating to an identified or identifiable natural person, a data subject. So an identifiable natural person is one who can be identified directly or indirectly, in particular by reference to an identifier such as a name, an identification number, location data, an online identifier, or to one or more factors specific to the physical, physiological, genetic, mental, economic, cultural, or social identity of the natural person. So now consumers will expect that the personal data are protected. And one of the main challenges that VR and AR face, it is to ensure suitable data protection for all users. So GDPR was enacted to protect the personal data and privacy of individuals. But what is GDPR? It is the General Data Protection Regulation. It is a European regulation, and Before GDPR, so GDPR entered into force in May 2018, so now it was 3 years ago. And before GDPR, national countries had their own national law of data protection. But as it was national laws, there are other specificities. And the main goal of this European regulation, it was to harmonize data protection in order to ensure a better data protection for individuals. So for AR and VR, basic privacy principle will apply, and it is now what we will see. So the first principle we have to keep in mind, it is the principles of privacy by design and privacy by default, what it is. Privacy by design, it means that when you develop a new solution, you always have to keep in mind GDPR principles. So you always have to implement data protection principles in your solution. And the principle of privacy by default, it means that these data protection principles, they should automatically apply without the consumer or the user asking for them to apply. So we will see now three main principles that we always have to keep in mind. The first one is the principle of purpose limitation. Personal data should be collected for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes. What is a purpose? It is why do I need to collect the data? Why do I need to process the personal data? And you always have to first define your purpose to process personal data. For example, you will need to collect some data to make the device function. You will need to collect specific data because of the purpose of your device, for example, of your solution. For example, it is to help people fighting against claustrophobia. And after having defined your purpose, you will define what data you need to collect. And for this principle, so you will have to apply the principle of data minimization. It means that you cannot collect a lot of personal data if you cannot be able to justify why you need to collect them. So personal data should be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary in relation to the purposes for which they are processed. So at first, you defined your purpose to personal data. And regarding this purpose, you need to say, okay, I have this purpose to process my personal data. And now, regarding this purpose, I will need those data. I will need those personal data in order to make my device function, in order to be able to process my data. So you cannot collect some data saying that maybe sometime you will need this data. You have to be able to justify why you process this data. And it is a real challenge for AR and VR because, as we saw, we will automatically collect a lot of personal data. The third principle, it is the principle of storage limitation. So now you know what is your purpose, why you collect personal data and why you process them. Now we know what personal data you need to process in order regarding this purpose. And now you have to ask yourself, how long do I need to keep this data? So you cannot keep the data forever. Personal data should be kept in a form which permits identification of data subjects for no longer than is necessary for the purposes for which the personal data are processed. So regarding your purpose, you have to ask yourself, how long do I need to keep my data? And then you can anonymize the data. When you don't need to have any more personal data, for example, you can delete the part of the personal data that permits the identification of data subjects. And an important point is that if you don't store the data, you only collect the data and you don't store it really long because you just need, for example, the personal data for your device to function, but you only collect the data, it is a processing. So even if you don't store the data, it is a processing and you have to apply GDPR principles. Another thing that is a part of GDPR, it is security measures, and it is really important for AR and VR because we will process a lot of really sensitive data, like biometric data. So you should implement appropriate technical and organizational measures in order to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. And the risk is really strong because of it is really sensitive data. So some example of security measures, it will be, for example, pseudo-minimization or encryption of personal data. So with AR and VR, some data processed are biometric data. In order to interact with the virtual world, it is necessary to collect movements data like head movements, hands movements, and it is biometric data. And this biometric data, in principle, it is prohibited to process this data, but there are some exceptions, like the consent of the person. So at the moment, there are no really discussion about AR and VR in the data privacy world, but as we saw, there are many challenges raised by AR and VR in privacy that data protection authorities will have to face. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And a round of applause for Solène. Solène, will you stay with us for the panel at the end? We have a few questions for you I can see in the chat.
Yes, sure.
Perfect. So thank you again, Solène, for the introduction. And now please welcome on stage Samuel Huber, CEO of Admix, who will tell us more about Data's Heaven. Hello, Samuel, and a round of applause for him.
Hey, Ariette. Hey, everyone. Can you guys hear me properly?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Solène, for this presentation. Yeah, today I wanted to talk a little bit about the more kind of global use of XR data and what we can see, how it's going to be used over the next few years in light of what's happening currently in the market with things like the IDFA and other big events that are happening in the marketing world, mainly on mobile. So first of all, quick background, if you haven't heard of us. So I'm running a company called Admix. We're about 3 years old. We're a startup. We're based in the UK. And basically what we're doing is building a business model for the metaverse. Concretely, what it means is we are building an infrastructure to make advertising work in virtual worlds like gaming or VR. And we did this with formats that we call in-play, or that other people call in-game. These are the type of adverts that are natively integrated within the gameplay itself. So if you're playing, whether it's a game on mobile or in the future a console or VR, it almost doesn't matter. The idea is that the branded content, the adverts, where they can be banners, they can be videos, they can be skins, they can be 3D elements, but they are natively inserted within the game itself. So if you're playing a football game, you might have banners around the stadium that are not intruding the experience, they just happen to be there. If you're playing a game like GTA, for example, you could have real adverts on the billboards inside the street, again, natively integrated. And the nice thing about this is we give control to the publishers, to the media owner, to decide where they want to place this. So the company, we've raised about $10 million in VC so far. We're employing about 40 people, and it's really hyper growth at the moment. Virtual worlds are really, really hot. And so we have a front row seat when it comes to advertising in new worlds, in a new generation of environments like gaming and also VR and AR. And so I wanted to share some insights and thoughts about you today on how that pertains to data. What does that mean for data? So Solène talked about this a little bit before, but as you know, advertising, real-time advertising in a digital world, this is driven by data, right? Advertisers are looking for new types of data, new insights on the users. This could be where they are located. This could be their age, their gender, any kind of insights about the end user that helps them serve what is seen as a more relevant ad for the user. And so they can target exactly the audience that they're trying to reach. And on the web, or in apps even, there's a lot of data floating around, right? Data is really commoditized, and mainly by two players, Google and Facebook, that have more data than any other player. And this advantage is growing by the day because of network effects. So Google knows pretty much everything about you on the open web. Facebook knows everything in a social context. And so those two players have managed to capture 80% of the advertising revenue, mainly because they have so many insights about your activity. Whatever you do online is being tracked and is being packaged, and that's what advertisers can target against. Now, this is what happened until now. There's been a lot of changes happening in the industry over the past year, but really over the past few months. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. But iOS 14.5, launched by Apple on the iPhone, is completely changing the way that advertisers are going to be able to measure campaigns and track attribution, because the IDFA, which is this kind of a cookie, but for the mobile, is now basically disappeared unless the user specifically says that they want to be tracked across multiple apps. And we're seeing the same shift happening on the web as well, where cookies are going to disappear, so that the users won't be able to be tracked between different websites. So what does that mean? This is actually huge. It's the biggest shift that ever happened in the world of marketing or advertising. Because if you think about it, when you are online on a website, you can, and you may be buying something on Amazon, for example. Well, Amazon can track that, and they know, of course, what you've been buying on the website. But what ties all of this together is that the advertisers would be able to track what you're doing across different properties. So they can see what's happening on Amazon and the other website, and then they can piece all of that together. And that gives them kind of a complete picture of the user and what they are doing online. And that is going away. It would be very, very difficult for advertisers to be able to tie different properties together. And this is the same on mobile with the IDFA, this identifier that was basically an anonymous identifier, a string or number that would identify the user across different apps. And that was very much used by performance advertisers. So if you are playing a game and you see those ads that are interrupting your game and allowing you to click on a specific ad to download the game, those advertisers would be able to tie the download to the ad because of the IDFA. So they would say, okay, this user has seen the ad, this IDFA has clicked on the ad and installed the game, therefore I can attribute my impression to this user and to this partner. And so this is basically what was driving advertising on mobile, mainly the IDFA. And now Apple is removing that, is asking people to opt in to the IDFA only if they are willing to be tracked. And the adoption rate of this has been about 5 to 10% in the US and in Europe. So very, very low. What it means is that the mobile ecosystem is going into a world that is more privacy centric, which is obviously great news for the consumers, because you don't need to be tracked, and there's no need for privacy to be compromised this way. Now, if you take the other perspective, which is the marketeers perspective, and of course we work with a lot of those, this is a huge change for them. Now they are really struggling to verify the value of their ads, the ads that they are serving, the campaigns, because suddenly they are not able to see if this ad has been clicked and if behind the click there was a download. So the measurements, the performance is really up in the air. So we're almost coming back to that old saying that half of the ad money is wasted, but I don't know which one, right? This is what people used to say with out-of-home advertising when it was really, really difficult to track. And this is true again. And so what happened is we've seen a pretty big crunch in CPMs. The value per impression has dropped, and advertisers are basically looking at new ways to make this work. How can they still find the same efficiency in the mobile ecosystem now that its ID is gone? So that was a long introduction to not only tell you, what's right and what's wrong. This is not really my position, but I'm trying to explain where the advertisers coming from, right? There is $300 billion that are being spent digitally every year. And obviously this is a huge industry that is going to figure out a way to reach their audience. And it's great what Apple has done. We've always, AdMix at least, supported this change because it puts the user at the center of the experience. But at the same time, advertisers are going to try and find ways to figure out how they can actually reach the audience, how they can find, again, an environment that has the data that is needed to do data-driven delivery in terms of advertising. And so over the past year, but really accelerating over the past month since the beginning of the year, we see that they're looking at gaming as a new media channel, a totally new untapped channel, right? As you guys know, gaming is 2 billion people playing games every day, huge amount of eyeballs, huge amount of engagement. But when it comes to advertising, it's only 2% of what's being advertised on social media. So for the same amount of eyeballs, same amount of engagement, really, really untapped market. And what's great about gaming from their perspective, again, I'm presenting their perspective here, is that there is new data, new signals that they can gather about user engagement without having to know much about the actual personal information about the user. For example, we've announced a partnership with a company called Integral Ad Science, and what they measure is just the viewability. Have the ads been seen by a real person? Yes or no? It doesn't tell you who that person is, but it proves that this ad is actually being seen by a real person. And so it's basically just one more building block that is being created to help develop gaming as a media channel. And there's plenty of companies like AdMix, like others, working on different side of this to help measuring this new environment without intruding on the user experience. And so for brands, suddenly this is a new environment, a new channel with an incredibly large amount of people, of engagement, and also rich data that could help be a replacement or at least a nice complement of the mobile landscape, where there's more and more regulation and, as we discussed, more and more policies that are making it difficult for them. And obviously, if gaming is the start of that, you can imagine that XR is going to follow, right? Gaming, in my head, is really the kind of first, proof of concept showing that we are transitioning into 3D entertainment. It's obviously a massive, massive industry, and there would be more use cases, and whether you are consuming that experience in a 2D screen at the moment or in the future in a headset, this is real-time 3D content, and that's really what we're talking about here. There's data like gaze data, other types of engagement data that are going to be extremely valuable for the advertisers, and certainly something that they are going to start focusing more and more on, and we've already been seeing some signs of that. So to summarize, gaming and more real-time 3D in general is starting to be seen as a new media channel by advertisers. Again, this is their position. One of the reasons that has caused this acceleration is the fact that traditional environments like the web and like mobile are getting harder and harder for them to reach the results that they're expecting. More regulation, GDPR, IDFA, making it harder and harder to track. So what do advertisers do? they try to find new areas with a lot of users and more opportunities for them. It's just a natural evolution of it. And so if you're a creator, if you are building VR and AR worlds, it's a transition that is happening. As a media owner, you can start thinking about your audience as a valuable audience and something that is really similar to a new media channel and would enable you to unlock a new revenue stream in the future. So that's basically what the insights that I had for you today. I wanted to start mentioning this, and hopefully a good topic for discussion later today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Samuel, for coming today and talk about this. We will have definitely some more discussion during the panel. Thank you, and a round of applause for you, everybody. F4. Okay, now we are going to welcome on stage one of our main partners, which is HP, and I'm welcoming Cécile Tézenas-Dumoncel, VR Lead Europe at HP. And as you may know, HP has 2 headsets that have been deployed last year and that are now in production and being delivered that are the Reverb G2 and the Omnisepp, and we are going to learn more about this and all the data around it. Thank you, Cécile, and a round of applause for you.
Thank you, Harriet. Good morning, everybody. Nice to virtually see you all in Virbela today. Hopefully we can see us face to face at some point. Yeah, so it was nice. I hear some interesting words during the 2 first presentation that can really resonate to our Omnisepp solution. So I heard about user at center, data delivery, security, and that's really very important for us. And that's something that was driving the way we designed our new solution. So let me briefly go, trying to share my screen.
Yes, it's the second pictogram.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that I can show you sharing this. Okay.
It's loading. Perfect.
Okay.
For the audience, don't hesitate to actually click above the screen to do a screen zoom so you can see full size in front of you the presentation.
Do you see the full presentation?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can see it.
Okay. Good. Yeah, so thanks for inviting me and today for considering the topic. I want to focus on HP Omnisepp, which is a fusion of VR and artificial intelligence. And it's not the future, it's really happening now. So what was shared previously, it's really something that we are putting in real. And so you may have seen us, HP, for a couple of years now on VR. We are investing in VR because we consider it's the future in computing, and at HP, since the foundation of the company, we believe in reinventing computing. So that's why we are coming up with the most comprehensive VR portfolio of towers, mobile PCs, backpacks, headsets, and also VR solution partners, so that everybody can build the full VR experience with our solution and services. And so today I'd like to, so as mentioned, Harriet, we have 2 headsets for now. So we launched HP Reverb Gen 2 last year, which is high resolution, clarity, and comfort. So it's a tethered headset based on Windows mixed reality tracking with Valve lenses that create high resolution of 2160 per high, super light, very comfortable. So enabling great experience. And this is the foundation of our VR portfolio because to that we added sensors generating data. So it's back to the previous presentation we are really in. The headset is becoming a data sensor generator. So we have added embedded in it the eye tracking, the pupillometry, the heart rate, sensors, and the face camera. So everything, this is Omnisepp headset, so everything is embedded. You can see here, for example, the face camera completely embedded in the headset coming from the factory when you purchase the headset. And what do we do with that? Because it's nice to have data coming out of the VR headset. The most important is to be able to create a user-centric experience. And to do that, we know that VR is a solution. So you have different building blocks. So you have this headset. And on top of that, our team has developed an artificial intelligence through that is delivered through an SDK that can be integrated in the experience to make it really more to make it adaptable to the users and adjustable to the experience. I put here the link. So if you want to have all the information, you can retrieve everything on our developer portal. There's a lot of information. You can even access to the SDK. You can play with simulators and access to the forum and the community. So we make it really easy for developer to try to play with it and to develop application. And so our first SDK is relative to cognitive load insight. So maybe not all of you are familiar with this. So what is cognitive load? Cognitive load is the amount of mental effort that you require to perform a task or learn something new. And there is, you can see here clearly on the curve, there is a direct connection between the cognitive load in black and the performance or your level of expertise grows. Basically, when you're learning something that is completely new to you, it's demanding more effort to your brain than when you knew it and when you have practiced several times the training. So this cognitive load insight is powerful to predict the effort to learn based on the brain capacity, the user engagement during the training, and the expertise growth and the content understanding. So that you can imagine that it's a very interesting insight for all the VR applications that are about training. And we all know that training is one of the biggest VR use cases. So that's one thing. Okay, we know what cognitive load is, and how did we get the insight of the cognitive load? You remember that I said the headset is providing information real time on the heart rate, the pupillometry, and the eye tracking. And it happened that there is also a direct connection between these three bioanalytics information to the cognitive load. So we have built analytics, and that's where the artificial intelligence sits. That is inferring this sensor data and providing inputs on the cognitive load through the format of an SDK that can be included in your experience. So that's where we said that VR is really becoming intelligent. With the data generated by the sensor, you can get a very useful information that can be integrated in training experiences. And I will show in a minute what are the use cases of this, the benefit of having this information. But before going that, and it's kind of resonate to what was said at the first session, we are manipulating very sensitive data information. And that's why we want to make sure that it's safe and secure. So that all the firmware secures the data during the capture. There is no data stored on the headset. The Omnisepp Sdk meets the GDPR requirements, and all the user data is de-identified, aggregated, and secure. So there is no way to access to your own personal information and use it against your or really make it public. So that we make sure that all the data remain secured, de-identified, and compliant with all the legacy. They're very important. And so maybe I think it's better to show you some example. And as I said, one of the first use case we see for the cognitive load is clearly training, because we know VR is improving the way people can train and learn. They can learn better and faster, and they have proven effective. They have proven to be effective, more effective than the traditional methods. I like to use this charter when you shows the retention rate after 1 year. So usually you remind 5% of what you heard during a lecture, 10% of what you do, you learn during a reading. And when you are doing something in VR, you retain 75%, which is close to what you retain if you are doing in real practical practice. So I can show you, so that's why we have so many VR training experiences. And some of our partners have started to deploy Omnisepp Cognitive Load SDK in their own application. So I will show you 3 examples. And if we have the time just after, we can go through one video that explains that. So the first one is about soft skills. So soft skills in VR, you can train anything. You can train how to run an interview, how to do sales, how to be familiar with the bias, the cultural bias, for example. And one of our partners called Ovation is doing VR training for public speech. That's what you see here. And they are using the Omnisepp inputs to measure the progress of the training during the several training is doing. That's one example, and you can see it in the analytics. They measure after the training. Other large use case of VR in training is everything related to high risk or safety. You all have seen military training in VR, police training, healthcare, first responder, or in that case, fireworkers. So it's very popular, and having information on how stress is the training during the training can be very useful and help him to improve session after session. So you can see here, this is a fireworkers training, and our partner Pixo was interested to get the pulse rate real-time information so that you see it when you are doing the training, you see your pulse rate. And it can be also a good way to practice yourself to calm down during stressful and high-risk situations. And last example I want to share, it's also one large use case of VR training is about production and manufacturing, maintenance of procedures, instruction. So here it's developed by Members, which is a French company based in Toulouse. And they are, in that case, they are doing training for electrical certification in industry. And you can see that they have made a nice analytics information that the trainee can look at the end of the training. And when you get the information on the heart rate, the cognitive load during the different training phase, and it shows here where in red where there was difficulties to learn one task. So that can be helpful in the next session to redo this task in particular. So that gives you some example on what we can do with cognitive load, and it can basically limitless. You can imagine that any type of training information, training simulation can be taking benefit of this. So that's what I have for me. So I put here all the information when you can retrieve all the details on the website and retrieve our use case videos. Let me see if I want to go, Ariette, if we want to play the video.
We are going to send the video. Yeah, we're going to send the video to the audience through a message to the room. So please, dear audience, click on the message that will be in front of you, as it's GDPR compliant, of course. It's your own internet browser that will appear. So you will have, as it's a YouTube video, you will have to actually click on the eventual publicity or else that will appear. So please go ahead and check the video.
Okay, I think it's working for me, so I believe it's working for everybody.
speaking is deep-rooted and widespread, common wisdom has been to practice in front of a mirror. Well, that mirror is being replaced by the virtual reality screen. Everyone has something meaningful to say, and our goal at Ovation is to give people the confidence to say it. One of the things we've always struggled with is when are they ready to translate from the virtual world to the real world. Omnisepp, it provides us with this extra layer of information to make sure that our software is actually taking their training to the next level. With Omnisepp, you can see all sorts of different analytics that are provided. The user can go through our analytics menu and they can see things like how their heart rate changed over time throughout the course of their practice speech, how their cognitive load changed over time. These metrics in combination finally give us the confidence to tell these users, you're ready for the real world with this speech that you've been working so hard on. Integrating the Omnisepp SDK into Ovation was incredibly easy. They have a developer portal that helps you get the SDK fully implemented. The time it took between when we first started the process of integrating the SDK and receiving the sensor data was less than 15 minutes. HP is iterating on their technology and their hardware at an incredible pace. They're adding all sorts of different features that us as developers really, really want and can take advantage of. And I think once customers get their hands on the hardware and the software that takes advantage of the new...
You now have the video again in the chat. Well, thank you so much, Cecile. We'll have a talk with you during the panel. I believe the audience might have questions for you. And see you in a little bit. Thank you so much. A round of applause once again for Cecile. We are now going to have a talk about IoT and XR and all the data in between. Please welcome on stage Philippe Corvall, software engineer, a little maker and Web of Things and modular representative. Thank you and welcome on stage. Does your microphone work now, Phil?
So, hello everybody, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Perfect.
Okay, thanks. Just one question before I start. How long am I supposed to talk?
10 minutes.
Okay, so I'll try to make it a bit quicker. So, can you introduce me? So, can I use a presentation tool?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so
just to say, the microphone quality is really, really bad.
Okay, so there is nothing I can really do.
Yeah.
Maybe I can make it lower, higher.
I don't know.
There is no delay coming from.
I'm checking. Try again.
Okay, so I can make it lower or higher.
Maybe try a little less. Yeah, sounds like a robot. Definitely a lot of hashing. Yeah. Try again.
This is coming from. Well, I don't know what I can do on my side. I'm using it the virtual machine, so maybe that's the reason.
Try doing you can see on the upper right of your screen, you have gears. Go in there and check reinitialize the voice. Try do that and see if that works.
I have a good connection here. That's probably the delay used by the online virtual machine.
Yeah, probably the virtual machine, definitely. Okay,
anyway,
so yeah, shall we go ahead and
play back my video I already recorded? In this case, it will be smoother, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. We'll put the video. You have the video? Yeah. We'll put the video. So shall we start at the beginning of the video? Is that okay?
Yeah, should be okay.
Okay.
There is no need to, you can stop it at 10 minutes, so that's not a problem.
Dear audience, please click on the video we've sent you.
Event, a live embedded event. And today I will speak about some use case where privacy matters in an Internet of Things architecture. So let me introduce myself first. So I'm a professional open source engineer. I used to work for big industry players like Tizen operating system for Intel. Then I work on Yocto on automotive project, and then I was able to join a Samsung open source group, and one of my contribution is a contribution to the IoT framework for interoperability in IoT. So currently I'm a contributor in open source project. I'm part of Mozilla Web program involved into IoT project, and I'm also contributing to Debian. I used to contribute to Qt and also the NetX RTOS system. So here is my address. If you want to contact me at this address, pearl.org, you will find a lot of kind of channel to reach me, and I'm currently available. So if my work are inspiring you, feel free to contact me. Maybe we can do things together. So I'm based in France. I can answer question in French if you want also at the end. And yeah, you can link me and see some updates about what I'm doing. So I shared a lot of demonstrations, some videos, and some updates about my contribution in the open source. So let's get back to the past and try to identify where Internet of Things began. So I think it started around the year 1984. That's an interesting date, but let me share some experiments some students made with a DIY Coke vending machine. So it looked like this, and I believe those are the people who set it up. And it was connected to the internet using this kind of hack. So that's pretty similar to what people are using today with Raspberry Pi and connecting probably some relays to for the dispenser. And it has so some kind of UX, because using the old finger protocol, you can check how many items are into the machine using a command line. And what happened today? So, okay, there was a lot of product on the market, and let's see if our promises are really achieved. So do we have today a lot of interoperability, or is it just a bunch of silos? Is the security model respecting also privacy? This means if you have everything in the cloud, is it maybe it's safer than having some device people can get into it, but at the same time it can have some side effects on privacy. So what we have today usually is the regular business is to connect the device to a cloud operator that will give you to the user an app to run on his mobile phone to control his device through the cloud backend. So now I have some open question for, it's about IoT, but it can be also applying to any things online. So how strategic is your home or your family or just your health or basically just your data? So that can describe your life, isn't it? What are you gaining with this kind of system and what are you losing? That's a question I think it wants to be asked. Who should you trust or delegate your system? What about data harvesting, collecting your personal data and selling it online to other business? What happens in case of data leakage? And something you should keep in mind that everything is costing money to run it. So that means that somebody has to pay for it. And how reliable is it? If a system too much connected to the internet can fall down, how do you survive this situation? Is today regulation or the cybersecurity involved enough to protect your strategic assets? What about just resilience? I'm talking about what could happen in 10 years and what can happen regarding your digital sovereignty. So this can some questions that could apply to big organizations, for instance. So in the end, I believe that we have some kind of dilemma between the technical answer and the cultural background of people making decisions. So I think that's a question, that's a kind of choice we are doing every day. So yeah, keep this in mind and try to see what's best your needs. So hopefully, let me mention about some regulations. So I'm French and so based in Europe, and we have this GDPR. That's a big text, but there is something that I've noticed that can be really interesting is this Article 25, which try to convey service operator to run their system with privacy by design and by default. That's really something interesting, and it can be a really good opportunity for free open source software and communities, because privacy is part of our community DNA. That's the kind of value we are pushing since the beginning, probably. So the challenge we have today is how to do Internet of Things with privacy. So we want to do something user-centric and obviously user data-centric. And how can it be decentralized to be more resilient? So let me now mention some privacy by design principles. That's something that's been proposed many years ago, but it's worth to mention them. So the first one is try to be proactive and not reactive. This means try to fix the problem before that occurs. Privacy should be the default. So it should not be an option, and it should be part of your design at the beginning. And for this, you can, I lost the focus. So yeah, in the end, your user should have a seamless experience. If privacy is well handled or bad handled, it should behave the same. So it's quite difficult for people to know what is going on from the UI. So if you are committing to provide privacy, that's a kind of trust you can get with users. And you want security, of course, because if your privacy is not secured, that's a problem. Visibility and transparency, this means keep it open. This means open implementation if it's software, openness of when the trouble are occurring, what are the fallback plans, and so on. So respect users and keep it user-centric. So you can find more detail on this link. It's not a consensual proposal, but I think it was interesting to get the idea. So now let me mention about some technical response to this. I believe the web is a good platform to achieve this kind of problem, because the web itself has been designed for interoperability, so it's built on standard and open source software. Most of what we have today on the internet is made with free software. It's decentralized. This means you can have many servers. And you have something really interesting is that we have some kind of trusted runtime, because the application is running inside the browser, and it's some kind of container before the container we have in the Linux kernel. We have some kind of isolation. Of course, it's hardware agnostic. This means you can move from one device to another. And the UI is rich enough to create a nice application. And you can also provide seamless experience using progressive web apps. This means on your mobile phone, you can add an application as a native application, and if you click on it, it will open your browser in full screen. This means you have the same user experience. And of course, it's programmable. So we have all kind of technology like a REST API for making web services. We can also have real-time connectivity using WebSockets. So people at W3C are trying to propose something called the Web of Things, which is a working group. We try to see how the web technology can be useful in an IoT context. So they are proposing some standards. They are not reinventing the wheel, because there are a lot of standards already on the web, like JSON, for instance, for description. There are some works regarding semantics, some WebSocket I just mentioned before. So everything we already have can be reused, but something are missing, like some kind of common semantics or unification of description about smart things. So this smart device. So they are working on a proposal, and now it's a recommendation since this year. And you can get all the detail on this address. And also there are some open source implementation like Mozilla WebThings, which is an ongoing effort. This is what I'm going to explain today. So WebThings, it's a smartphone platform born in Mozilla
I have
Emerging
sent
Technology
the link
Lab.
of the video
It
if you
has
want
been
to
designed
watch
from the beginning with privacy
full
in mind,
video there.
and
Thank
it's
you, Philippe,
using a
for putting it back
simplified
again.
model compared to what
And
Global
another
3C is
extra
doing.
demo here
So
in the
in
public
the end,
chat.
there
Thank
is some
you
hope
for the
to
backup video,
converge
and
into
really
something
sorry about your
that
sound.
match the
So I
use
suggest
case
we go ahead
for
and
the
have
smart
all the
home and
speakers
what's
come on stage now for the open discussion and questions from the audience. So we are welcoming back on stage Solène, Samuel, and Cécile with Philippe. Okay, everybody is here. So maybe I should start with a simple question, which is data the new big thing really happening in VR, or is it really more of the use cases and the hardware, software, and everything that happens around the technology, or is it really what is happening inside? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, maybe I can, yeah, hear it.
Go ahead.
Hear the question. Maybe one question. I think at HP, we really believe that data is the next step in the future of VR. If you can consider that the virtual reality glasses would become our new displays, and that we have a good technology for traditional VR, we really see data as the next step. It's not a game, it's not one small thing. We really think it would be evolution in the future of VR.
And how is that data really going to be used? Because I know that we have GDPR here. Maybe Solène can talk about that a little bit more. But how is it going to be used? Because we can see the use cases with what we can do with what Philippe was showing with the IoT and everything, and then Samuel showing all the different ads and stuff. So is the content the data from the content, or is it data for, you know, following what people are doing? What is the most important in it? Is it what you're tracking, or what are people doing? How, I mean, there's so many different datas inside in terms of the experience, in terms of what you can have from your different captures on the headsets, from what you can see, I mean, the ads and everything. So what is the data that is the most important right now? And is it data in general, or is it a specific type of data? Please go ahead and open your microphones and talk.
Well, I think there's many use cases, and I think, you know, it's not necessarily one use case that would be more important than others. Again, the way that, you know, we look at it at Admix is data is going to basically open a new business model for the creators. Again, it doesn't mean that, you know, you need to be compromising your users' personal data or anything like that. But as we discussed previously, there is some level of data needed for advertisers, for brands, you know, to be part of the experience. So for us, this is how we're looking at this. It's really a way to start to creating a business model, start to creating an economy within the world of XR. A lot of that would be trading on data. It might not be personal data, more contextual data, engagement data, things that are hard or impossible to measure in other channels, but that are very important for brands, for sponsors, that are going to, you know, help effectively subsidize the creators of tomorrow. So for us, this is how we're looking at this, and you know, what we're trying to put in place.
Definitely. And maybe Celine, about this data, without compromising, do you think, and I'm thinking about a question that we had in the audience earlier, is can we like can we search for data and not have like a specific target and then go ahead with GDPR? Like, how are we supposed to research what is going to happen with the data, or research new use cases using the new hardware, like for example the Omnisepp, where we will have plenty of data and we're creating stuff, but sometimes we don't know really what we're facing with all the data coming in, and how can we prepare with the data that we are using or gathering?
Yeah, there are some specific rules actually for research. And for example, regarding, I talked to you about storage limitation, but for storage limitation, if you process personal data for research, there are specific rules and you can actually keep the data longer. But I think that's something that we should keep in mind. It is that we don't always need to have personal data, because if sometimes it is for research, maybe at first we need to have personal data, but at some point maybe we can anonymize the data, so we can delete the part of the data which permits to identify the person, the data subject, and maybe after we can keep data and we can keep what we need of the data, but it won't be any longer personal data.
Okay, but data doesn't have really to be personal. It really has to be depending on, take an example of having an experience that is changed or altered because of the data that has been collected. But it doesn't have to be individual. I mean, it doesn't have to be like Solen's data to alter the experience, change it. So is there like a specific regulation on this kind of information? And I'm jumping maybe on Gregory's question here. Is there like a specific regulation about what can happen in VR, like the new AI regulation? And do you think it's actually needed? Maybe Samuel or Cecile or Philippe, from the different data that you can collect, is it necessary to have something a little bit more stronger?
Actually, if it is not personal data anymore, if it is an anonymized data, the GDPR rules won't apply anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we are, segmenting different kind of sources of data. We're looking at, we call them events, and we're looking at, well, there's personal events, but this is something that is actually not the most useful. We're looking at gameplay events, which is things that happen, actions that are happening within a specific game or within a specific virtual world. And this could be decisions that a player makes about, I don't know, if it's a driving game, which car are you actually using, or habits. Are you spending the game to talk with your friends or to complete specific quests, right? This is not personal data. It doesn't enable you to identify who the person is, but you start to get, if you aggregate all these data points across various games, for weeks, you start to get a good idea of the behavior of that user inside the virtual world. And that is a currency that is very beneficial for the publisher of the game, because it's something that would enable the advertiser or the brand to target a specific user instead of another without knowing anything about who they are in the real world. So this difference in almost a different paradigm, right, where you now are able to give the brands, the advertisers, access to the information that they need without compromising on the real identity of the user. This is something that is a lot easier to do in a 3D world because you have access to a lot more data. compared to a more linear, browsing experience on a website, for example. And I think that's really fascinating, because then you still protect the users, which is obviously priority number one. But at the same time, you don't want to. We can still create an economy. Advertising, I know it has a really, really bad name, but it still powers, the free internet. It's not necessarily always done in the right way, and there's been tons of abuse. I think that we have a chance now to have a reset almost in this new world, where we can really think, and build that ecosystem with the user in mind, and create a system that actually works well for the users, but also is creating great revenue streams for the creators, for the publishers, which is a very, very important thing. If we want XR to really become, truly mainstream, we need to have more creators able to make a living out of their apps, out of their creations. And I think that, advertising will be a big part of that, guaranteed. And we just need to make it work in the right way.
Okay, and then two questions here. And I don't want to be like the good or the bad side of that. I can definitely see the interest in that, but I'm thinking, can you, even without it is specified in personal data, but anonymized one, manipulate the information, or have advertisement that is falsely, I would say, and this again goes more probably in ethics, but would you think, let's take the example of hyper reality. You all know this video where it's AR basically, but not VR. But can we go to the same stream of information being sent to someone and eventually have them, have wrong ideas or change their mind or things like that with the data that is now collected, even if not personalized? Because you were saying earlier, Samuel, that you can actually, a bit like the phone and the data that you have in there, have the same kind of content being shown to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, hyper reality, I mean, it's obviously a great artistic representation, but for me, it's, if that experience is so bad, no one's going to use it, right? You would never be forced to put glasses and have that experience in front of you. If it's like that, if it's that bad, if it's completely taken over by brands and advertisers, then the use case is not there. You just take the glasses off. So I just don't see a realistic world where that kind of experience could happen. It's the same with websites that have ads everywhere and pop-ups and things that are, malware being installed on your laptop. You just don't go back there, right? So the publishers have an incentive to create a great experience for the users so that the users come back. And I think, in VR and AR especially, if the experience is bad, if you have pop-ups and adverts that pop up in front of you that are not natively integrated with the world, then no one's going to use your app. So it's going to be maybe a short-term gain, but you're never going to be able to build a brand or build a successful virtual world. So I think because the control is in the publisher's hands, if they abuse it, if it's intrusive, if they capture data they're not supposed to capture, it's not going to work for them. So I think everyone is aligned in the sense that as long as the publisher, the content owner, controls the environment, then they will make sure that that experience is as good as it should be. And there will always be bad actors, of course, but at least it's not the advertisers who have the power, because they don't care about the experience, right? As long as the publisher keeps that control, then that's how we are approaching it, at least. So no, I just don't see that becoming ever a possible alternative, because people are not stupid. They would just take the glasses off if the experience is bad, and they would just think, well, VR is terrible because there's ads everywhere. So that's not at all what we're trying to create. It's about creating the right balance so that the content creators can still get paid, creating a great economy, but always put the user at the center.
Okay, so I'm not going to have like YouTube experiences with advertisement I cannot skip for like 5 minutes in VR.
I think that'd be terrible. Yeah, that would be terrible if you're immersed in it and you literally can't, you know, at least in YouTube, you can close the tab, you can look away. If you're immersed, then the only solution you have is to take the headset off. So I think the tolerance for disruption in XR is going to be a lot less than it is on the web. And again, that's, you know, pretty much the mission of what we're trying to do.
Okay, maybe the audience, do you have any questions? Oh, ProTube. Will come as soon as user need to use the device services. It's a good opportunity to build a new way to imagine advertisement. Okay, maybe please raise your hands, and you have the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen of the application. Feel free to raise your hand, and you can open your mic maybe and ask your questions directly. Go ahead, ProTube.
My question is more, okay, we don't have pop-ups and things like annoying things for the user right now because it's an opening market. We want at first to get the user involved in their use. So, but once the their use will be normal and a need for the user, VR or XR or AR. To me, it's same. Once it will be a need, once it will replace your mobile phone in everyday life, there you will get the pop-ups because you will not be able as user to just give up the device, because right now imagine you give up your mobile phone. There is many things in our world you can't do normally. So once you have the obligation to use the technology, we will get for sure those bad advertisement from some publishers. And maybe an even bigger problem is you need to collect data to have a good advertisement. Right now, the data is locked down by the system manufacturer, like Facebook right now don't allow the application to gather data as from the camera or etc. But they do so on their end. So it could leave the publishers with no power comparing to Facebook or other system manufacturer on the data gathering and on will you be able to propose good ads if Facebook or the system is looking down the publisher to get the given data? That's the other question. Sorry, it was long.
Go ahead. Maybe
Is that
yeah.
a question?
It's a full question.
A general question. Go ahead, guys, if you want to answer.
The question is more about the risk in the future for the bad practice of advertisement. And the other question is about how to not get a monopoly in hand of Facebook, for example, for everything about gathering information in VR.
On my side, I will not comment much. I mean, it's really depending on the business model. At HP, our business model is nothing related to the data. So that's why we are sponsoring paid application that make sure that you won't have advertisements. But that's our own business model. So that's really depending on the business model of the platforms.
I think it's about having a competitive landscape as well, right? As you said, if you have a monopoly and you have to, users are forced to use a specific hardware, and then publishers are forced to use this hardware as well to publish their apps. Yeah, then the consumers don't have much power, and you could have bad practices happening, of course. But then if you have one or two other devices that are less strict when it comes to holding all that data for themselves, and that enable publishers to have access to other type of monetization models, then if the experience is too bad, gradually the users will eventually gravitate towards that use case. So yeah, it's really about both of the question in my mind have the same answer, which is you need a competitive landscape. You don't want all the power to be held in one headset manufacturer that can make all the rules.
Philip was talking about the open platforms that might help. I know that Philip is a lot inside of the open source softwares, and he's saying non-block devices would allow it when developers can deploy their own apps. Okay, and there is actually a few headsets that are being developed and shared open source. So maybe we can see how that will work in a few years from now. Okay. Does anybody have any extra questions? I do have a question on content in general, but that was actually already answered. That was in the chat earlier. Will ads be more imaginative in VR? I guess so. Not just billboards for the moment, will they? Maybe Sam, do you have extra examples of that?
No, absolutely. I mean, again, it's VR, AR, gaming. I group them all together when it comes to what we are effectively selling to advertisers. It's very new. It's very different. They're not used to 3D environments. And so we have to go step by step. And the first step is presenting them with a new environment, but with formats and standards that they already have. Because if you try to change everything at the same time and they need to build new creatives and it needs to be 3D, like they don't understand it. Their systems are not even supported to serve those kind of new advertisements. So the first step is billboards, it's videos. You can integrate them really natively in the environment, like this big orange banner that we have on our side there. Technically this could be ads, right? So it's native, it's there, and it can change and you can have nice animations. That's the first step. But obviously every media channel always develops ad formats that are truly native to their own specs. And we believe that for XR and gaming, it's 3D. So you're talking about, skins, sponsored fashion, 3D elements that are actually sponsored by brands, but fully interactive. For example, it's a watch that you can wear and it can give you options in the game, or even a car that you can drive. Like that is what the future of advertising in XR is. It's product placement, it's actual mini experiences inside the content. But to get the advertisers excited and interested and understanding what performance means, the ROI of advertising into a new channel, you need to start with a simple format. So we're going step by step, but certainly placing banners in VR is not the end goal.
Okay, well, we'll see how everything goes in a few years then. I would like to say thank you for everybody, to everybody today coming and talking about data. Maybe if you have other questions, feel free to go ahead and talk to the speakers. You have the different coordinates. I've put the videos in the chat. Don't forget to open them before closing the app. And please, a round of applause for our speakers today. I would just like to conclude the day as well by telling you that Laval Virtual is on the July 7th to 8th for the professional day, so don't hesitate to come around. You can come in virtual, in actually this space, and have fun with the different speakers, exhibitors that will be here. Don't forget, LVDays is opening their different course, speakers, and exhibition sponsors and everything for next November. Don't forget to check that out as well. And I have to say, just thank you for coming today, and see you in September for the next Laval Virtual Days, which will be on XR Threads from what has been happening for the past few weeks and months, and what will be happening for the end of the year. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and see you soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.